the heck, hacker?
Welcome back, everybody, and you read that title right. Despite me being a shotgun guy for the most part, I do branch out, and today we're gonna do just that, kind of. I had to work shotguns in there somehow naturally. Now, if you played Warzone long enough, you know there are some guns that you just avoid. There are tons of pretty viable options to use now thanks to recent balancing changes, but there's still some guns that could use some love, let's be honest. So I'm gonna talk about two of them, the Model 680 and the cowboy rifle, the Mark II Carbine. You might be thinking to yourself though, why the 680 with a rifle? Why would you compare such different guns? Well, when you put slugs on the Model 680, you basically have a precision weapon for medium ranges that can actually do some damage in the right hands. The Mark II Carbine, on the other hand, has gotten bad rep after bad rep because it's kind of a pea shooter in some ways, but it has some redeeming qualities. So I thought it'd be a fun little experiment and idea to look at these two guns, kit the 680 out to be a rifle, and see which rifle, quote unquote, is better, the Model 680 or the Mark II Carbine. If you enjoy this type of content or shotgun content, be sure to subscribe because this is the place to be for shotgun stats and loadouts that are analytical and detailed and actually give some detailed stats. Also, shout out to True Game Data and the Exclusive Ace, whose stats are both used in this video for some of the Mark II rifle stats, so I'll leave a link to their channels down below. Be sure to stop by and give them some love because without them, I probably would not have made this video. So without any more babbling, let's just get into it, and keep in mind, timestamps are going to be in the description. The first thing we want to do is talk about the most important part of each gun, the damage. Now the Mark II Carbine's damage profile is pretty simple. What I mean by that is what you see here is pretty much what you get. This is taken from True Game Data's site, by the way. It seems like there is no real drop off, or at least the damage doesn't really change, and these are the values you get for the most part. I do want to say I don't know for sure if this is a bug or intentional that there is no real drop off, but just know this is basically as good as it's going to get for this gun. So if we examine this, if we hit one headshot, we can hit anywhere else in the body and get a 2-shot kill. That's pretty awesome actually, but if we don't hit the head, it's going to take 3 shots on average. So naturally, this is a pretty precision-based kind of gun as you would expect, and with a rate of fire of about 88 rounds per minute, if it takes 2 shots, the time to kill is about 681 milliseconds, which is decent, and the 3-shot time to kill is up at around 1.36 seconds. So if you miss that headshot, chances are you're going to be in for a world of hurt because that is a lot of time to get shot back at. Of course though, you'll be weaving in and out of cover and you won't be out in the open for the most part, so time to kill isn't always everything and you can kind of make this work if you play your cards right. This range extends to about 26 meters, again assuming there's a kind of a drop off, but if you use barrels you get about 40% more range, but we'll get into that later. Now I want to check out the Model 680 slug damage. These numbers, by the way, I went back and instead of measuring the screenshots of damage, I went in and tested everything with my girlfriend's account using stuns and other weapons, and I was able to accurately get the right values of damage. So what you see here is the most accurate stats I've had for the Model 680 with slugs. In previous videos, I used measuring pixel by pixel in GIMP, and sometimes it was just slightly off by a point or two of damage. So this is definitely the more precise but tedious way I've gotten damage and data, but it really paid off to be sure. So if we look at the damage, you'll see, oh man, we got a lot, but you'll notice that this thing is a powerhouse. Because there are so many ranges, I figured I would look at the range that fits most with the carbine, so like a medium range, and I figured that the 12.8 to 28.1 meter damage range was the most comparable at this point because let's face it, these guns are more designed for medium range and aggressive playing rather than being a sniper rifle or a huge long range precision type of weapon. So if we look at these values, the 680 deals massive headshot damage, and you can even hit a 2-shot with just stomach and chest. That's not even going over the damage before this damage value range, because the damage range prior to this one, you can 2-shot stomach and up only, so it's so much more rewarding. But past 12.8 meters and up to about 28 meters, 2 shots is usually what you'll take if you hit your shots, and if they only have 2 plates, 1 headshot will do the trick because of the 208 damage. As a note, the slugs on this gun always take 2 headshots to kill no matter the range, it's basically infinite, besides point blank where it can actually kill in 1 shot. So with a rate of fire of about 70 rounds per minute, the time to kill is at about 850 milliseconds for 2 shots. If you take another shot, it's going to go up a massive amount to 1.71 seconds, which is just kind of bonkers. Now, hitting limbs and legs, by the way, is never good with slugs. They are notorious for having really bad leg damage, so just a heads up. But if we compare the two, the 680 is actually a stronger option and has more damage ranges that work in its favor, because closer than 12 meters, it gets more forgiving than the Carbine, and past 28 meters, it still packs more of a punch, so 2 shots are more likely for skilled players. I mean, you can 2-shot chest and up to about 41 meters for Christ's sake, and that's without any range boosting attachments. That's pretty gnarly. So even though the Mark II Carbine has a faster time to kill and fire rate, if you take 3 shots because you miss a headshot, which is probably going to be more often than not, it's going to take 1.36 seconds. But with the 680, if you get 2-shot kills, which again is generally more likely than 2 shots with the Mark II Carbine, I would say, then your time to kill is at about 857 milliseconds. But again, if you miss one, that jumps up astronomically. Just looking at the damage, I gotta say the Model 680 is looking a lot better, and not many people really know about it. And I get why, because it's pretty niche and there's other downsides, but I don't know if this says more about the 680 being strong or the Mark II Carbine being really weak. But before I attempt to make a decision, there are other factors involved with the guns to worry about. First off, slugs, despite having power, have really slow muzzle velocity, and this makes things hard to hit at times if they're moving or not facing you completely at range. So what I did was I took both guns out to about 149 meters, kind of an arbitrary number, shot a target, and measured the time it took for both to hit. Just as a note, this is based on my own testing, so the numbers might be off compared to True Game Data or Ace, or some others because of variables in testing, but I wanted to keep my numbers consistent with each other in a controlled environment in a private match of Modern Warfare. So the Mark II Carbine has a muzzle velocity of around 745 meters per second. That is with no barrels, which can only help the muzzle velocity, but on its own, it's perfect for medium range fights. The 680, on the other hand, with no attachments, was sitting at about, womp womp, 263 milliseconds, and that's really painful actually. Now that sounds a lot slower, and it is, but in-game, you don't really notice it too much unless you're just really far out. 149 meters is not a range I would use this thing. At medium and close range, it's not really that bad. I played with slugs a lot, and you get used to it pretty quick. It doesn't just feel quite like a hit scan as much as the Carbine does, though, up close. Now, this was at 149 meters again, and the drop for slugs is pretty bad. At 149 meters, I had to aim pretty high above my target to get that shot, but the Carbine has no issues with this whatsoever. The one trick to helping this on the 680 is the Marauder Suppressor, which actually boosts muzzle velocity on slugs, in addition to giving you the best boost to range than any other single shotgun attachment can do, which is about 24% more range on its own. The muzzle velocity increased up to about 373 meters a second, or close to 40% more velocity. This makes the gun even more deadly and more usable for many people, so while it isn't as fast as the Carbine, again, at ranges you should use this thing, it won't be too bad overall. But yeah, it's something you have to keep in mind if you're trying to push that range. It's a balancing factor. Slugs are hard hitting but imprecise at longer ranges. Now, does this make or break the 680 compared to the Carbine? I would say not entirely. The point of these two guns is to be high risk, high reward. So while you are so far with the 680 a bit more at risk, the reward is also a lot better, especially up close and at medium range. Now, I do want to go over a few stats in regards to movement and mobility to get another idea of the gun. Now, the movement speed on the Mark II Carbine, for example, is about 4.748 meters a second, and the Model 680 is at about 4.651 meters a second. Naturally, though, we don't use these guns bare bones like this, so what happens when we stack some attachments? Well, the Mark II Carbine has barrels that hurt movement speed, but nothing to help it, so that's basically what you're going to get. The 680, on the other hand, has a lot of options. If we use the Marauder like I recommend, and then offset it with the no-stock option for a faster speed, the speed comes out to about 4.686 meters a second. Normally, the no stock helps a lot, but the Marauder does have a hidden effect of slowing movement speed down. If you were really trying to be as fast as possible, you can use the short barrel, no stock, and the choke instead of the suppressor, and you get one of the fastest shotguns in the game compared to some of the SMGs as well. And the speed is at about 5 meters a second, which is faster than the Cold War shotguns. This build is a lot more high risk though, because no suppressor and no boost to muzzle velocity, but you make up for that with insane speed and aim down sights time. It's a build I've used quite a bit and gotten somewhat used to, and for those really skilled players, I absolutely recommend giving it a shot. The build is the swap barrel, the choke, no stock, 5 milliwatt laser, and slugs. you only have 5 rounds, but you are going to be blazing fast. For most people, and especially new to slugs, I recommend a different build, which I'll show you soon. The Mark II Carbine can aim down sights in about 267 milliseconds, and you can help or hinder that, but with the build I recommend, which is right here, the aim down sights time goes up to about 250 milliseconds, which is only using the medium length barrel and the tack laser. If you wanted to help that even more, you can replace the precision stock for the aim down sight stock to get it slightly faster, and you can even take off the suppressor, but I recommend using it. The 680 can aim down sights at about 350 milliseconds, so slower, but when we use the build that I recommend, the aim down sights time is, well, 350 milliseconds. All the attachments basically negated each other, but this is a solid build overall for most people, I would say. Sprint out time for both is at about 183 milliseconds for the Carbine, which is very fast for a base gun, and the 284 for the 680. The Mark II Carbine doesn't really get any faster because the stippled grip basically is negligible, which it doesn't need with a sprint out time like that, and the 5mW laser on the 680 helps it get down to about 167 milliseconds, which is 1 frame faster than the Mark II. So after going over some mobility, range, and damage, I figured this is a good place to be able to say which I think is better. While there is no real concrete answer for most people and the builds tend to differ, I think that based on the stats and damage, and despite being slower with some mobility, that the Model 680 is ultimately a more rewarding gun to use. Now let me explain. These both, as I said before, are really for more medium range fights. The Carbine has the luxury of being able to compete more at long range because of the muzzle velocity, but in the ranges I think you should be using it. The Model 680 and the Carbine are both fun and quirky guns, but the 680 packs such a punch that if you wanted to use one of these and master it, the 680 is probably going to be more rewarding. Not only do you get awesome 2-shot ranges for chest and up, but up close, all you need is 2 stomach shots. Slugs were never meant to be super long range builds, but rather to extend that shotgun power just to a medium range. Can you snipe with these? Absolutely, but it's going to be really difficult. So in the end, if you want to pick one of these to master as a rifle or carbine type of gun, then my vote, big surprise, is the Model 680. Of course, pretty much every other sniper or Kar 98 or the SPR is going to be better overall, I think, for what these kind of guns do, but the Model 680 can actually shine up close compared to these other options as well. So while it's quirky and good in some ways and outshined by a lot of other guns, it can still be pretty strong and can be useful in good players' hands, and in my book, more so than the Carbine can. It could also be that I've gotten so used to the 680 with slugs that the Carbine was a lot harder to use, but when I hit my shots, the 680 was just more reliable because of the damage. So I'm gonna go with the 680. And there you have it, my friends. This video was a little bit longer than normal because I had a lot of stats I had to kind of work in. So sorry if I also seemed like I was talking really fast. It was just so much to go through. I didn't want this to be a 20-minute long video. But there you have it. Make sure to check out these builds and these class setups. I really enjoy both of them, but the 680, in my opinion, is a little bit better overall. But let me know in the comments below what you think. Is the Mark II Carbine a little bit better? Is the 680 actually pretty terrible? And with all that being said, I want to see you guys in the next video.